So, welcome everybody to the Happy Menopause Live. Absolutely delighted to have you. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Jackie Lynch. I am a registered nutritional therapist and I'm your host for tonight. So, I'll tell you a little bit more about me when it comes to my slot, but the most important thing to know is that I'm a nutritionist and my specialist area is women's health and the menopause. And I am absolutely delighted to be chatting to Dr. Ellie Cannon tonight because she and I have known each other for a long time and we've always wanted to do something together. So it's very exciting that we are actually going to be doing that, and I'm going to be introducing Ellie to you very shortly. But before I do that, I want to just explain to you a little bit about how the evening's going to work. So the first thing I want to do is let you know about our brilliant prize draw. So I wonder if we could just have a little glimpse of what the prize draw is on the slide there. Here we go. We've got a fabulous prize draw, and I owe a huge thanks to Better You, Silk, Peachy, and Soak and Sleep, who've all donated some terrific things. So Better You have donated some wonderful magnesium flakes, a sleep lotion, some vitamin D, and some vitamin B12. Soak and Sleep are simply my favourite bedding company, and they have offered 2 silk pillowcases that are rather fabulous. Peachy, who do amazing breakfast toppings, very sort of menopause-friendly breakfast toppings with lots of flaxseed and phytoestrogens in. So they've given us some wonderful samples. And Silk, who create the most amazing natural vaginal moisturizer, really great for anyone who's struggling with vaginal dryness, painful sex, or prone even to UTIs. Just helping to reduce the risk of that by keeping things moist is really important. And you can see that they've donated some wonderful moisturizer, but also an intimacy pack with a little bottle of bubbly to get you in the mood. So how about that? And then, of course, we've got, you can see it on there, and I'm going to wave it now. So Dr. Ellie's book, The Little Book of HRT, that we're going to be talking about tonight. And also my 2 books, The Happy Menopause and The Happy Menopause Guide to Energy. So they're my A to Z of nutrition to help you through the menopause. So we've got loads of exciting things, and we're going to be running the prize draw. Now, what I will say is this, that for the books, we can send them to you, but for the other prizes, I'm afraid, because of postage issues and customs issues, it's only going to be available to people who are actually in the UK, and I'm really sorry about that, but it's just the practicalities of a prize draw. So here's the way we're going to do it. If you'd like to win one of these things, then pop your email address into the chat. You can send it privately to me or to Hayley, who you can see there in the chat, who's looking after us tonight, if you don't want to share it with everybody. And we are going to compile all the email addresses, and we're going to run the draw tomorrow. So if you're UK based and you fancy winning these, then pop it in the chat, and we'll run the draw tomorrow and let you know who's won, because there are some fabulous things here to win. Okay, so that's enough of the prize draw. Let's get on to the main event. So if we can just lose that slide, and I would like to introduce you to Ellie. So Ellie, can you join us? And I'm just going to make sure that my view is, hopefully we're going to be pinned so you can see a big picture of both of us. I don't know if it's me who, hold on a second, just checking that I've got the right view here. Okay, so hopefully you can see a nice big picture of me and Ellie on the screen, and it's just the 2 of us and you can't see anything else. That's what I'm aiming for here. So hopefully, there we go. That's what we need. Brilliant. Okay, Ellie, welcome. Can I introduce everyone to Dr. Ellie Cannon? Ellie, give us a wave.
Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's very exciting. As I've said, I've been dying for us to do something together for ages. I do feel it's the dream team of nutrition and HRT all coming together because
For
they're the
sure.
2 key pillars. So let me tell everybody about the format of the evening. We're going to start out with a nice 15-minute interview with Ellie. So she's going to be talking through all the issues around her book and HRT, and I've got lots of great questions for her. Then we'll move on to 15 minutes with me, where I'm going to be talking menopause nutrition and sharing with you some of my key favorite nutrients and approaches to help you manage your menopause. And then we're going to move on to a sort of panel discussion and questions. So this is where you put all your questions in the chat and you can ask us any questions you like. Now, just a note of caution, we can't answer very personal clinical questions about you because neither of us are in our clinic and we're not able to do that. But so keep them general, but there's lots of advice we will be able to give. So pop those questions in the chat. Some people have already sent me questions in advance, so I can draw on those as well. So it's really your moment to be asking any burning questions that you have got about HRT, about nutrition, about menopause more generally. It's not often that you've got your GP for an hour and a quarter, everybody. So let's make the most of it. So we'll then wrap up at around sort of 10 past 8 with a final message, our key messages from Ellie and me, and then we'll wave you off to go and have your dinner. So without further ado, let's just bring up Ellie's introduction slide, and I am going to tell you exactly who she is. So here we go. Dr. Ellie Cannon. So delighted to have you, Ellie. So, Dr. Ellie Cannon is a leading NHS GP, and she will be familiar to lots of you here in the UK as the doctor columnist for the Mail on Sunday and the Mail Online. And she's also our TV doctor, regularly appearing on ITV's This Morning and broadcasting on BBC Breakfast and ITV News. She's also on the radio all the time, well-known contributor, often featuring on 5 Live, Woman's Hour and LBC. And her latest book that you can see here, The Little Book of HRT, it's actually her 3rd book. And it really is a great common sense book for anyone who's struggling with all those various questions. You can see a link in the chat that's just popped up. And if you're thinking, well, got to get that, I recommend you get it straight away. It really is the go-to manual for anyone considering starting HRT, wondering about HRT, using HRT and not quite sure whether it's right, worrying that they've got questions that they're not getting answers to. That's what this book is for. So that's the book, and let's start chatting to Ellie. So if we can lose that slide and bring Ellie back. There we are. Right. So my first question to you, Ellie, is this. What inspired you to write The Little Book of HRT? Here it is, everybody. Doesn't it look gorgeous?
So obviously, everybody will be aware that there's been a lot of menopause chat in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, I would say. Obviously, Jackie and I are very aware of that professionally. There's been a lot of talk about the menopause, and it's fair to say that it's exploded in the media. And
Yeah.
exploded with things like menopause mandate and exploded with famous people involved in the menopause and products, what we now call the meno industry, labeling products and even copywriting words like menopausing. And so there was this sort of explosion of talking about it. Which I actually didn't really sort of get particularly involved in, although I do a huge amount of women's health and a huge amount of HRT and menopause in my clinic. And actually, what I realized after a few years of this chat was still there's a huge number of people that come into my clinic who have no idea what HRT is, don't actually even know that it's this hormone or that hormone, or that you can buy some over the counter, or didn't actually know all the basics. So we're sort
Yeah.
of chatting all the time about menopause, menopause awareness month, all this, that, and the other. And actually, I think I feel from because I have a normal NHS practice, and I feel that we sort of basically left a lot of women behind
Yeah.
chatting on. And so when I sort of spoke about it with the publisher, they said, they just want some really basic information. What is actually in HRT? Who can take it? Who can't take it? You mentioned, sort of phytoestrogens, what people should be doing if they can't take HRT, because obviously a lot of the narrative in the last few years has been about HRT as the best thing in the world. Well, it isn't for a lot of women. A lot of women don't take it, and a lot of women don't want to take it. So it's really just really sensible, basic facts. Exactly what you said at the beginning. Nobody has a lot of time with their GP. Even if you go and see a gynecologist, or even if you see
Mm,
somebody privately, you don't have a lot of
yeah.
time with them. So this is really, in a small book, everything I would tell people about HRT, the pros, the cons, the ins, the outs, if I had the whole afternoon with you. That's really the point of it.
Yeah, great. Well, what are the pros? Fire away.
Well, HRT is definitely sort of like, the first line. If you want medication for your menopause, which I always say, not everybody does. If you want medication, HRT is the medication. So it's well researched, well evidenced that it will help with the big headline symptoms of menopause. So the hot flushes, the insomnia, the vaginal symptoms, and also a lot of the lesser known symptoms of menopause, the joint aches, the brain fog,
Yeah.
that type of thing. So very, very much they are the pros, and you can be prescribed HRT for any menopause symptoms. And we think now there's somewhere between 32 and 38 symptoms recognized of menopause. And also, HRT is a recognized treatment, a recognized benefit pro if you have osteoporosis. So if you have osteoporosis and you need medication beyond calcium and vitamin D, HRT can be a treatment for that.
And what do you think are the biggest misconceptions around it taking HRT?
It's a great question. And actually, the last section of my book is myths about HRT. So I think there are misconceptions for and against. I think the biggest misconception, which has been perpetuated in the last few years, is that every woman needs HRT
Yeah.
and that's
It's
how it
quite
is.
scary.
And that's
Is
really
that
not
right?
the case.
Yeah.
Every woman does not need HRT. A lot of women can't take it. A lot of women don't want to take it. A lot of women it doesn't help. So I suppose the biggest sort of like in favor myth is that everybody must take HRT. No, that's not the case. So that's sort of, and then I think historically, we've had this enormous worry, which is fair, about HRT and breast cancer, which has sort of been a prevailing headline for sort of the last 20 years. And that isn't a misconception because breast HRT will slightly increase your risk of breast cancer. Some types of HRT will, not all types. But interestingly, we have to put that risk into perspective. And what I
Mm.
always tell women is actually your increased risk of breast cancer from HRT is not as great as your increased risk from being obese or from drinking alcohol. So, yes, there is a slight increased risk from HRT, but it's actually relatively small.
Yeah. And so it's about taking into account all the risk factors and thinking to yourself, well, actually, I am quite overweight, or I do drink a lot, so I need to think harder about those as my risk
Mm,
factors in the
mm,
first instance. One of the
mm,
things I hear a lot in my nutrition clinic, because, obviously nutrition is my specialist area and I don't prescribe HRT, it's nothing to do with me, I'm not medically trained. But I always want to know what's going on with a woman and whether they are taking it. And
mm,
sometimes I'll think to myself, do you know what? I think you really should be. We should certainly be having a call with your doctor about this because
mm.
there's only so much nutrition can do, and some women would really benefit from this. And they'll say to me, my doctor said I'm too young. I'm 45. What would you say to that?
Okay, so that's basically wrong for two reasons. So, first of all, if a woman is experiencing menopausal, perimenopausal symptoms young, which we would say 45 or below, then actually we advise HRT sort of even stronger because we're protecting you against the bone loss and cardiovascular disease. So actually, if you are younger, it's even more important if you've gone through menopause. So that's the one thing. And second of all, according to the British Menopause Society, who are the experts in the UK, a woman can trial HRT for any menopausal symptoms. So it isn't a case of being too young or this or that. It's really driven by the woman. Now, obviously, we've got people who've joined from other countries, and it's different in other places. I think in the Netherlands, there's a very similar GP system to here. Um, in America, obviously, people tend to be going to their gynae. So it's really, and it can often be dependent on who's the doctor in front of you, but certainly now with menopause in the UK, and I would hope globally, it's really should be driven by what a woman wants, obviously taking into account the risks and this and that, but it should really be driven by that individual approach.
And there are different types of HRT, aren't there? It
There
comes in
are.
forms. So tell us about that.
Okay, so there's different types of HRT. HRT will always replace the estrogen. The estrogen is the female hormone, and HRT will always include estrogen. So you can, so a woman will always have estrogen, and then as well as the estrogen, if you still have your womb, so if you've not had a hysterectomy, alongside the estrogen, you will also need a progestogen or progesterone to protect your womb. So that's not about replacing anything, that's just protection. So if you don't have a womb, if you've had a hysterectomy, you would be on estrogen only HRT, but otherwise you will be on the combined, the estrogen and the progesterone. So that's sort of one sort of like basic classification. Then we have situations where women either take it in a cyclical way, like a menstrual cycle, and we call that cyclical HRT, and then you'd still have a little bleed, or continuous, and then you don't. And that's normally dependent on age. As you get older, you take continuous and you don't have the bleed. And then there are differences like pills or patches, and that boils down to, or gels, which are very quite popular now. And that boils down to your individual risks and your preferences and sort of those sorts of things. And then there's a type of HRT called vaginal HRT or topical HRT, which is just estrogen. And that does what it says on the tin and it goes into the vagina. And you use that as a cream or a little vaginal tablet on like a little applicator. And that just goes into the vagina. And we just use that for um, bladder symptoms, sex symptoms, vaginal dryness, all the sort of things within the pelvis and the gynecology region, which, and that's so low risk, actually. I mentioned earlier about breast cancer. Vaginal estrogen is considered so low risk, you can even buy it over the counter in the UK. You don't actually need a prescription for that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so that, yeah, go on.
I would just say that it's worth anyone who's sort of thinking, yes, but I don't really want to do HRT. Vaginal estrogen isn't sort of HRT in the systemic sense that we
Yeah.
know it. And it can be a game changer because if you are struggling with issues around, painful sex or vaginal atrophy and itching and discomfort or recurrent UTIs, which is a massive thing as the
Mm.
estrogen drops, then this can be a game changer. And so I would feel reassured to have that. I think it's fair to say, isn't it? Even if you're thinking, "Oh, I'm not sure about HRT, this is a different thing."
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I wouldn't change anything you just said. 100% sort of concur with that. And you're absolutely right to mention the bladder because bladder symptoms are horrible, very significant, very common, very undertreated. They really affect women in so many ways, physically, emotionally. They stop us going out because we don't know when we're going to find a loo. Like it's just awful having difficulty with the bladder. Your bladder is very, very sensitive to estrogen. So when the estrogen drops with the menopause, because the bladder and the urethra are right next to your vagina and your womb, all the same tissues are affected by the drop in estrogen. So replacing that estrogen, as exactly as you said, with putting it into the vagina, will also sort of re-moisturize and sort of reinvigorate, if you like, the bladder and urethra. And you're absolutely right; it's can be quite game changing. You can buy it over the counter, and we give it to women long term, even when people are much, much older. And You can even use it as well as systemic HRT. You will not get side effects or risks from it because it just stays in the
Yeah.
pelvis.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything I'm hearing here is there are lots of different types of HRT. So what happens if it doesn't work for you the first time? I mean, is it worth going back to your doctor and saying, oh, is there a different type? How many types are there?
Yeah, I mean, loads. There are loads of different types. There must be just 30 that I could think of prescribing, like just right now off the top of my head. And that's just on an NHS, on a normal, regular UK formulary. Absolutely loads because we've got all different doses ranging from low, medium, high, very high. So we've got lots of different doses. Then you've got different formats, so pills, patches, gels, spray, the vaginal, as we said. Then you've also got the cyclical or sequential, and then within those you've got different brands. So in the same way that you might go and sort of buy your sort of, Walker's crisps versus your other brand. I can't think of another brand of crisps now. Can't believe I just mentioned crisps to a
Kettle
nutritionist.
chips.
I can't believe I mentioned crisps to a nutritionist. But so you've got different brands. So there's so many different types. So absolutely, we would say a trial of sort of 8 to 12 weeks, see what you think, and then there's the option to go up, to change around this, that, the other. Some people are very lucky, start something straight away, and they're off and away. Some people, it's a bit of a trial and error and can take a good few months to get going.
Yeah, okay. Now, something else I come across a lot in my clinic is women who come to me and they've been on HRT and
Yeah.
it was brilliant and they loved it and they felt really well on it. But they've been told I've had my 5 years and now I've been taken off it. I'm feeling rotten and I've come to you because I want to see what nutrition can do. Now, nutrition can do lots of things, but it's not HRT. They're two completely different things.
Mm.
So tell me about this 5-year rule.
So there's definitely no, oh, is that
Oh,
okay? There's definitely no 5-year rule. So, as far as, again, the experts are concerned, one can stay on HRT for as long as you need. There's no age limit, there's no duration limit, as long as you're constantly discussing the risks and the benefits with your prescribing doctor. Now, actually, most women will only need to be on it, let's say 5 to 7 years. Naturally, the menopause symptoms would have passed then while she's been on it, and then she can come off slowly and feel fine. But there are some women who choose to stay on it, and they choose to stay on it having discussed the risks, the long-term risks, which might be breast cancer or might be stroke. And also after we've talked to you about keeping you at lowest risk. So, like we said, switching you onto vaginal estrogen or the what's called the transdermal, so the skin way, so not a pill, a patch, a gel, those things, the sprays, they are less risk for stroke than a tablet. So we take you onto the lowest risk, the lowest dose, we try and do that, but there's definitely no 5-year rule. The British, you can read about it on Women's Health Concern, which is the patient arm of the British Menopause Society. There is no anymore, there is no sort of duration. That's different, of course, if you've got a very high risk of stroke, or if you're from a family where there's a lot of breast cancer, your GP or prescribing doctor, would want to talk to you about that. But it's up to you at the end of the day.
okay. Um, now, I just have one last question and then we're going to move on. I can see there's questions coming to the chat, so keep them coming because we're going to get to those when we get to the Q&A section. So the options if you can't take HRT. Obviously, I'm
Yeah.
going to talk about nutrition in a second, but that's not the only game in town for other options. So what would you suggest to someone who comes to you in your clinic and they can't really take HRT for whatever reason?
Yeah. And that's really valuable. And that's actually a really in a book that looks like it's just about HRT. Actually, that's a really big section. There's a lot of people who can't take HRT because of contraindications. They can't take it, maybe, for example, because they've had breast cancer, or they don't want to take it, or they've tried it and it hasn't worked. And so when we talk about alternatives, they're either complete alternatives or they're in addition, like you said about sort of the nutrition, that's in addition, really, these things. So really the alternatives to HRT are more symptom specific. So there isn't actually, I mean, actually, apart from nutrition and exercise, there isn't actually other things that are sort of holistic like HRT. Nutrition is obviously and exercise is. But otherwise, then we focus on the issues you want to deal with. So, for example, you mentioned at the beginning in the lovely prize draw, we've got sort of the vaginal moisturizers and vaginal lubricants. Now, they're excellent. They can be a great alternative if that's your specific symptom. They're not hormonal silk, are they? You can use those instead of using HRT. Um, Pelvic floor physiotherapy is very good for the urinary issues of the menopause. There's one specific medication that we use for hot flashes that's not hormonal. We can use medications for sleep because sleep problems are a very big issue. So we can recommend that you have CBT. Um, I will mention antidepressants. And the reason I'm going to mention antidepressants is, again, in the last few years, been one of the big myths that if you go to the doctor and you're offered an antidepressant around menopause, they're fobbing you off. Now, they might be fobbing you off. Obviously, I can't speak for every doctor in the world, but actually, both in America and in the UK, there are antidepressants that are licensed, so recommended for the mental health changes of menopause. So actually, they can be for a woman, particularly if a woman's had them prior to menopause, they can be something that helps with sleep. Obviously, it's not going to help vaginal dryness, but help with sleep, help with mood. So there's lots and lots of alternatives that I cover. You're obviously going to talk obviously much more about sort of food and phytoestrogens and also the food that women need in terms of their bones. Osteoporosis medication is an alternative. So with the alternatives to HRT, it tends to be very focused on what we're trying to deal
Yeah,
with.
yeah, yeah. So everybody, really worth chatting to your doctor about this and making sure that you're getting the support you need. And of course, the great thing is you've got all this advice here in Ellie's
Exactly.
book, which means if you get the book, you can then go and have a much more meaningful
Yeah.
conversation with your GP because you'll feel empowered to know what the potential options might be. And when there's only 10 minutes in there, you need to make absolutely all the most of your time. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Ellie. That was a great
Thank
introduction to
you.
the book and HRT. And we're going to be coming back to you in 15 minutes or so when I've done my bit. And I can see lots of questions coming in. So keep an eye on those because we'll be addressing those when we get to the Q&A in a minute. Okay, so thank you, Ellie. If you can turn off your camera and oh, and it's time for me. So I'd just like to introduce myself. Uh, I am a menopause nutritionist with a short hand for what I do. I work in clinic most of the time, and I am supporting women who are looking for a nutritional approach to managing their health. Most of the women I work with tend to be perimenopausal, menopausal, and postmenopausal. Um, and there's an awful lot that diet and lifestyle can do to support women through this phase. So I might be working with a woman who's looking for support alongside an ongoing medical condition. It might be managing menopause symptoms. It might be a more preventative approach to healthcare. So any and all of these can be the things that I work on. Um, so just take off my slide for a second, if you would, Hayley, because I want to wave my books. Um, so here is picking up on the point that Ellie made earlier, which was that menopause hasn't really made it out to communities. You know, there's a lot of famous people talk about it, there's a lot of headlines, there's a lot of stuff about it, but ultimately, an awful lot of people out there at community level who are just still not knowing what they need to do. So I wrote books. I wrote this book, The Happy Menopause, Smart Nutrition to Help You Flourish, which is my symptom by symptom guide to nutrition through the menopause. And I hope you're appreciating that I'm branding my earrings and my jumper with my book. And my latest book is The Happy Menopause Guide to Energy: Nutrition to Rejuvenate Your Brain and Body. Because so many of the women who come to see me, they're worrying about their hot flushes and they're worrying about their anxiety and all these things, but they're also really, really exhausted. physically exhausted, but also mentally exhausted with issues around brain fog, poor memory and concentration. So I decided to drill down into the very, very big um, area of energy with that book. I also have a podcast, the Happy Menopause podcast, where I invite special guests once a month and we talk about different aspects of the menopause. So pretty much everything I do is about talking about the menopause. And what I'd like to do with you now as part of my little section is have a little bit of fun. So could we please bring up the energy quiz slide? Here we go. There's a symptoms quiz here for you. Now, in my new book, The Happy Menopause Guide to Energy, I have got actually 7 quizzes. They're symptoms quizzes, and I've stolen a couple of quizzes from there. And my symptoms quizzes are designed to help you identify which particular micronutrient you might be struggling with. In my clinic, I would be sending you off for blood tests or perhaps stool tests, depending on what we're talking about. In the book, I can't do that. So I want you to do a little bit of work with symptoms quizzes to help identify what might be the issue. And then we take a look at whether it's iron or B12 or whatever it is you might be deficient in. So these two quizzes are things I want you to take a look at right now and just decide how many of these symptoms are common to you. Have a little look at the blue one and count up and maybe pop in the chat. Feel free to say all of them if that is what the case is. So how many of those seem similar to common to you? The reason I focused on that is because these are all classic signs of a blood sugar imbalance. And for me, from a nutritional perspective, balancing blood sugar is absolutely nutrition 101 when it comes to managing the menopause. And the reason for that is because it helps to regulate levels of stress hormones. Now, here's the thing. The body has a plan B. We weren't just abandoned to the menopause. Of course we weren't. There are backup systems for literally everything in the body. It's a very, very super top high performance machine. And the menopause is no exception. So within that, we have a backup plan for menopause. And it's this. As the ovaries start to reduce the production of estrogen, the adrenal glands take over. And they are programmed to produce a weak form of estrogen post-menopause to keep us fit and well, which is great. Brilliant backup plan. But there's a catch. The adrenal glands also regulate our stress response. And they are programmed to release cortisol and adrenaline during times of stress. Now, because we're still programmed genetically about 10,000 years ago, when our stress hormones come out, they are thinking imminent physical danger, saber-toothed tiger or similar, and they want to take action. And as a result, they will generate that fight or flight response. And our body's got one job, and its job is to keep us alive. So the fight or flight response is a life-saving response. So of course, the production of stress hormones is going to take precedence over the production of any estrogen you might need. So if you are chronically stressed as you come through menopause, and the chances are most of you are, because frankly, menopause comes at the most inconvenient time in a woman's life when we've got a lot on, then that is directly going to impact the severity of your symptoms. So really important to understand that. Now, of course, one of the things you really need to think hard about is stress management. What can you do to support yourself? How can you manage your schedule so you're not overloading yourself? Some of the stresses in your life will be context-based and only time will deal with those. But, are you saying yes to everything? Are you taking breaks between meetings? Are you still looking at emails in the evening and weekends? Are you taking time to breathe at lunchtime? Just these things that can really help reduce those extra stress hormones. Now, from a nutrition perspective, there's one big thing you can do to really regulate your stress hormones, and that is keep your blood sugar balanced. Because every time your blood sugar crashes, your body releases more cortisol and more adrenaline. And I am betting that you don't need any more cortisol and adrenaline in your life. You're probably producing quite enough as it is. So here's how it works. The body's programmed to keep levels of sugar in the blood in a very narrow band. And if it goes above or below that, that creates a state of emergency. Things that make it go up, unsurprisingly, sugar, sugary foods, cakes, cookies, chocolate. Refined carbohydrate, like white bread, white rice, white pasta. Simple carbohydrates, things like fruit juices and jams. And then what we would call stimulants. You might have some on the go at the moment. Caffeine, alcohol, nicotine can all interfere with the insulin response. And if there's too much of any of this stuff, out comes insulin, and its job is to clear it all off, send it to the liver to be stored. But if there's too much, the liver's big, it's about the size of a small rugby ball, but it can only take so much if you've been packing the chocolate away. Then any excess sugar will be stored as fat. So important to recognize that every time your blood sugar spikes, you are encouraging your body to lay down fat stores. And weight management is a key consideration for a lot of women as we go through menopause. Now, because it's an emergency response, it doesn't carefully calculate how to get you back to that nice narrow band. It just hoovers up the whole lot. And in a short space of time, blood sugar crashes. And you'll be feeling tired, irritable, shaky, headachy, dizzy, and absolutely desperate for something. And we all know that feeling because we've all had it. And that's, low blood sugar is a problem. It's dangerous not to have enough sugar in the blood. It's our primary source of energy. In fact, the brain is exclusively reliant on glucose as a source of energy. Um, so, what we need to think about is what's going on here. And the stress hormones are released because it's dangerous not to have enough sugar in the blood. So, cortisol takes action. First of all, it sends a message to the liver saying, that stuff you stored a while ago, can we have it back, please? And it sends a message to the brain creating the craving. You'll know the one because it's never for a green salad, is it? Know that we crave spinach salad, but we don't. It's always for something sugary, carby, maybe a cup of coffee. It could be a glass of wine. It can depend on the time of day as to what you might crave. But it's something your body knows instinctively will give you that quick fix. And so, of course, it's a double whammy. The liver releases the sugar stores, you obligingly stuff something in, and in a short space of time, instead of going back to the nice narrow band, insulin spiked, you're feeling okay. In the background, it's saying, I don't think so. And so the whole process can start all over again. And you can see how the background to your day can be these highs and lows of blood sugar with constant production of more stress hormones that are going to be interfering with those sex hormones and really exacerbating your menopause symptoms. And if you go to bed with your blood sugar high, instead of staying in the nice narrow band, insulin kicks in, blood sugar starts to drop, and lo and behold, bing, you're wide awake, 2 or 3 a.m. Not sure why, it wasn't a hot flush, there wasn't any noise. The chances are it's all about cortisol. It's saying, come on, wake up, there's a danger on the way. So if you're in the habit of getting off to sleep, no problem, but often wake up in the night, then you do need to be thinking about what's going on with your blood sugar. So I'm just staying on this slide for reference, just so that everyone's got access to the quiz in case people are wondering if it should be moving. So balancing your blood sugar is going to really help keep things nice and stable. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, you avoid some of the classic ones. You avoid the refined carbohydrates, the white breads, sugary foods. You don't need me to tell you that, a large bar of chocolate is full of sugar, but it's the hidden sugars. Things like those, 250-gram pots of fruit yogurt contain between 4 to 6 teaspoons of sugar. Certain breakfast cereals have between 7 to 9 teaspoons of sugar. A glass of orange juice from a carton, a fresh orange juice carton, contains roughly the same amount of sugar per 100 grams as the equivalent glass of Coke. So, there's a lot of sugar out there. 4 grams of sugar is about a teaspoon. So if you can do the maths, if you're looking at a portion and it's saying 28 grams of sugar, that's 7 teaspoons. You probably wouldn't choose to add 7 teaspoons. So think about that. And then think about reducing the stimulants, caffeine and alcohol in particular. They're both killers for hot flushers, quite apart from anything else in relation to blood sugar. And they both really disrupt your sleep as well. And if we can get some sleep, we all feel a lot better. So be thinking about that. But the secret weapons in all of this are twofold. One is complex carbohydrate, fiber. So brown stuff, brown bread, brown rice, brown pasta. The body burns through complex carbohydrate much more slowly, keeps that blood sugar nice and steady, stops all those horrible symptoms coming. And other examples of complex carbs would be vegetables, great source, and fruits with an edible skin, because by and large the fibre hangs around the skin, rather than fleshy tropical fruits where you're not eating the skin. So I'm thinking apples, berries, plums, maybe satsumas, because the orange peel isn't the skin, it's the white stuff around the orange flesh you need to think about. And then the big secret weapon in all of this is protein. Protein is hard to digest. It slows down the release of the carbohydrate even further, keeps you going for longer. And so the trick here is protein and fiber with every meal and every snack to keep your blood sugar balanced. So by protein, I mean meat and fish and eggs. I mean lentils, chickpeas, beans, hummus, tofu, soybean, nuts and seeds, all great sources of protein. Now, we women aren't very good at getting protein, and it is really important because every body cell is made of protein. Our entire DNA is made of protein. Our skin, our hair, our nails are made of protein. And here's the thing, if you're worrying about thinning hair, you could blame the menopause, but are you actually eating enough protein? Are you giving your body the tools to do the job? Because its job is to keep you alive. And if you're not eating enough protein, it doesn't care that your hair's not looking great. It's just going to send the protein to your vital organs like your heart, your lungs, your liver. Our bones and our muscles are made of protein. And the amino acids found in protein-rich foods are used by the body to create key neurotransmitters that regulate things like mood, memory, focus, concentration, motivation, all those things that we can so often struggle with as we go into perimenopause and menopause. So really thinking hard. Oh, I didn't say quinoa. I normally do Delphine, so thanks for flagging that. So think hard about getting protein with every meal and snack. So at breakfast time, if you like to have toast, that's fine, but make it wholemeal toast. And maybe you'll have unsweetened nut butter or cottage cheese or hummus rather than jam or honey or Marmite that don't have an ounce of protein in them. If you like to have cereal, then make sure it's not too sugary a cereal, or maybe to have porridge or overnight oats. And then I want a couple of tablespoons of ground flaxseed, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds. I'm going to talk about ground flaxseed when we get to the questions because I've had a question about that. Um, that's going to really beef up the protein. And although dairy is a source of protein, it's not the most concentrated source of protein. Certainly milk isn't. So maybe use something like a Greek yogurt that's got 9 grams of protein per 100 grams. One of those concentrated ones that come in those hard plastic pots rather than the Greek style yogurt that don't have tremendous amounts of protein. But that's why I'm adding in the nuts and seeds as well to bump it up and make sure that you've got that thing to keep you going. And eggs, don't let anyone tell you can't have an egg every day. You totally can. They are an absolutely brilliant source of protein, practically a superfood. So maybe it's eggs with avocado and spinach or wholemeal bread, that protein fiber combo. And then when you're thinking about your main meals, think about a quarter of the meal, a fist size of protein, whether it's a chicken breast, a salmon steak, a couple of dollops of hummus, whatever your source of protein is. If you're having starch, you don't need to have more than a quarter of the overall meal. If people are struggling with weight management, then you really need to be thinking about, are you eating too much in the way of carbohydrate? So about a quarter of the meal, about a fist size is what's required. And then that leaves half the plate for all those lovely vegetables. So I want a quarter of dark green leafy vegetables. So things like spinach, rocket, kale, watercress, cabbage, great sources of very menopause-friendly nutrients I'll come on to explain. And also then the other quarter would be, well, let's say mushrooms, cauliflower, tomatoes, carrots, anything that's not green, basically. So what we're doing here, you don't need to be weighing your food, counting your calories, worrying about, am I getting enough of X, Y, or Z micronutrient? If you just think about my quadrant, a quarter of the plate like that, you're going to be getting everything you need. You're going to be balancing your blood sugar, reducing those stress hormones, and giving your adrenal glands a little bit of space to produce the estrogen they need. So that's blood sugar. And then I'm going to talk super quickly about the orange one. Now, just for the record, these are not only menopause symptoms. These are specific symptoms relating to either blood sugar balance or, in this case, magnesium deficiency. Now, magnesium really is every menopausal woman's best friend. It's a super mineral. It's got about 300 plus jobs in the body. And one of its big jobs is to calm the nervous system, regulate our response to stress. So that if you're feeling twitchy and jittery, operating on sheer willpower and just clinging on by your fingertips most of the time, the chances are you're low in magnesium. We burn through it when we're stressed. So it's a great one to be thinking about. It also regulates muscle function. So tired, aching limbs, that twitchy eyelid, classic sign of magnesium deficiency. And it also supports a process called peristalsis, which is the contraction and relaxation of the bowel as it pushes the stool through. So that's something you can be thinking about. And it's great for getting people off to sleep. So the best source of magnesium, dark green leafy vegetables. Spinach, rocket kale, watercress, cabbage, broccoli. Great sources of magnesium. And guess what? Kale contains twice as much calcium per 100 grams as milk. All that lovely calcium for your bones. So dark green leafies are a good source of calcium. They're a good source of iron if you're struggling with perimenopausal flooding. They are a fantastic source of most B vitamins apart from B12, which is only found in animal sources. They're a great source of vitamin K and vitamin C. Now, vitamin C we absolutely need for the production of collagen, which the body uses to create the bone matrix. We need calcium to keep our bones hard and collagen to keep them flexible, so we bounce and don't break if we fall over. So thinking about those dark green leafy vegetables is going to help you on a number of cases, but magnesium particularly is brilliant. You can also get transdermal magnesium, so Epsom salts baths, for example, 2 or 3 handfuls in the bath, soak for about 20 minutes, and then the magnesium will absorb through the skin, calm you down, really get you going for a good night's sleep. So magnesium's a massive all-rounder. You can consider magnesium supplements, but do check with your doctor if you're taking any medication, specifically blood pressure medication, because it's a natural blood pressure lowerer. So do treat these things with respect. But the transdermal things you can work very nicely with. You can get a nice magnesium sleep lotion, sleep spray, etc. So there are lots of ways that you can do this. There are so many more things that I could say, but I'm going to lose that slide now and just give you a quick reminder that all of that information and more are in these 2 books. And I am going to open it up now to question time because I know there were lots of questions. So Ellie's going to come back and join us. And I've been sent in some questions that I've got, but also I could see that there were some great questions that were coming through. So I am going to start with this one for you, Ellie. In fact, just first of all, just a comment that someone's made, which I'm really pleased about, which is, thank you for mentioning the 5-year rule. I had surgical menopause at 39, now 54. My GP's obsessed with me coming off. So really great that you touched on that.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning surgical menopause because that's, so important. If somebody's gone through menopause because they've had surgery, so have their ovaries removed, and women who've gone through early menopause, surgical menopause, premature menopause are more at risk of the long-term effects of menopause because they're menopausal for longer. So
Yeah.
those risks of cardiovascular disease and osteoporosis, it's even more important for you to have that estrogen replacement in that time. So there really isn't a rule, and you should send the GP to the British Menopause Society fact sheets because they're very clear on that.
Great. Well, hopefully that'll give you some support, LP. Now, a great question from Daniela here. How do you know and choose which type, cream, patch, gel, and brand is best for you? Where do you go?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I mean, that's probably why I wrote my book, Danielle, and I go, a big chunk of the book is about that. I mean, the thing is that I sort of do this sort of decision maker in the book, and what will happen is you'll go through, somebody will come in and they will have symptoms that might direct us a certain way. For example, like we said, you might have vaginal, bladder, these sort of symptoms, and we might sort of try and direct you straight away to the vaginal estrogen. Let's say you're looking more at the systemic estrogen. You might have a Mirena coil in, for example. You might have had that for contraception. If you've had a Mirena coil for contraception, that can stay or be replaced as the progestogen of your HRT. So that means that you're just going to choose an estrogen either as a pill or a patch. And you would choose a pill or a patch very much dependent on your preference. So some people like to have a patch, some people don't. It's a bit like when we were all choosing contraception. People like different things. Some people like pills, some people like coils, injections. You always start at the lowest dose. There might be a reason why we push you in a certain direction. So, for example, as I said, if you're a smoker, if you're particularly overweight, if you've got a high risk of stroke, we would push you into a patch or a gel or a spray because we know that those skin types of estrogen don't carry the increased risk of stroke. I think still in the UK, we tend to prescribe more tablets. That's probably just heritage and what your doctor's used to. But it's really a sort of, there might be some reasons why we go in one direction. You might have some preferences. You might want to try what your friends tried, if you know. Also, as well, another big thing, and I can only speak for the UK in this situation, but I would imagine it's global. If you're going to try something, please try something that's easily available. We've had a problem in the last few years with, in the UK, particularly with supply issues. So there's nothing worse than having your favorite medication that's working really well and you can't get hold of it. So for that reason, I would always recommend somebody chooses a prescription that's quite common.
Yeah, yeah, that's very sensible advice. Okay, and then another question that sort of touches on that really is it one dose of HRT fits all, or is each woman assessed on the quantity that's given of each hormone? And if so, how is the assessment done?
Well, we would always, you should always start at a low dose. That's basically the point. And we can't say whether or not if we give Jackie HRT and we give Ellie HRT, who's going to respond in which way. And we could give Jackie 1 milligrams and it does loads, and we could give Ellie 2 milligrams, it does nothing. And we can't predict that. So it's just a trial, low dose. Based on your symptoms, we know if it's working because your symptoms will improve. We know it's not working, your symptoms won't improve. Blood tests tell us nothing. Blood tests are incredibly sort of fashionable and they're very, very much pushed on people, particularly in the private sector. But actually, again, and Jackie will tell you this in terms of sort of nutrients and all things around the body, you can have a level of something and it doesn't mean you've got symptoms. It's all very, very individual. Yes, if you're completely out of the reference range and you've got, an iron in your boots, of course, we would all feel very tired. But we don't know how 50 units of iron feels to me versus 50 units of iron feels to my next door neighbor. And that's the same with estrogen. So taking blood tests doesn't really help. It's really much more about how you feel and if you feel it's changing things.
Yeah, yeah, really good advice. Now, I've got a question here about supplements, which is, apart from vitamin D, any other supplements would you say are crucial? Well, I'm just going to give a little moment to vitamin D because it is crucial. And
Hmm.
I say to you all right now, if you are not taking vitamin D right now, you should be. It's October. Um, we should be taking vitamin D, certainly here in the UK, and I would sort of venture to suggest across sort of certain Northern Europe as well, between October and March, because the UVB rays are simply too weak for the body to produce the vitamin D we need from exposure to sunlight. Now, why do we need vitamin D? Well, the big thing in menopause terms is the fact that we cannot absorb calcium if we are low in vitamin D. So there is literally no point in stuffing yourself with calcium tablets if you are low in vitamin D, because all that will happen is that you won't absorb it and you could end up with calcium deposits in places you really don't want them, which could be painful and problematic. So if you are worried about your bone health, for example, then vitamin D is the way to go, because most of us have quite a lot of calcium in our diet anyway, particularly if we eat dairy. So it's more about absorbing what we're taking in than worrying
Mm,
having the tablets, unless you obviously have been diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis, in which case your doctor will then advise. So there's a big difference between, self-prescribing regular vitamin D, being using your common sense, and prescribing what you might need in terms of calcium and or vitamin D supplements. So really important just to sort of use a little bit of common sense there. Vitamin D does other stuff too. It's a very, very fast moving area of research. It's very important for mood and mental health. Those of you who struggle with issues like seasonal affective disorder, there are lots of connections now with vitamin D deficiency. Also, it's a big player in our immune system. If
mm,
you're regularly coming down with coughs and colds and infections and struggling to throw them off, it could be vitamin D deficiency. You can get a test from your GP. You can get relatively reliable tests online if your GP isn't able to give you a test, because it's getting a little harder in some surgeries, I'm hearing. Um, and really, you should be around, if it's 75 or over, then you're in sort of good levels of vitamin D. If it's lower than that, your doctor will advise, and they might give you a therapeutic dose. A standard decent dose for most of us, if we're just taking it through the winter, would be 1,000 international units, an adult dose. Um, I know that Public Health England talk about 400 IU. That's a little bit of a child's dose in my book. So I would recommend 1,000, but it's a very sort of sensible adult dose. But if you're low, you need to see your doctor, because you need to operate on facts and not guesswork, and you might need a more therapeutic dose, and they'll be able to advise based on your results.
mm,
So vitamin D is really crucial. Beyond that, I would say no supplement is crucial. It's going to depend on the individual. It will, certain things, a really good multivitamin could be crucial for some people. Probiotic could be important for others if they've just been having antibiotics. Certain people might be trying to approach an anti-inflammatory diet and considering fish oils. Not great if you're on blood thinners. So you always need to treat supplements with great respect and check with your doctor, because just because something's natural doesn't make it safe. I think magnesium's a goodie. It's a pretty benign one generally, and mostly quite helpful for people who struggle with low energy and poor sleep and so on. But it is very much horses for courses, a bit like the HRT. You can't sort of say, well, it's a one size fits all, and
mm.
every supplement is crucial except for vitamin D. And if you're not taking it right now, you should be. Now I did see a question that I thought was a really nice one. Just bear with me. Somebody was saying, should you still be experiencing symptoms when on HRT? Or does that mean you're not on the right dose stroke type?
Yeah, I would say if you're still having symptoms, then it's not doing its job because that's why you're on HRT. So that would mean if you're still having your, let's say you're having hot flushes, if you're still having your hot flushes, that would mean increase the dose. And once you've increased the dose safely with your doctor, if you're still having symptoms, then a very big, important question we should all ask ourselves, and I'm sure Jackie will agree, is this menopause or is it something else?
Yeah,
Because menopausal women are not just experiencing menopause, we also experience a whole host of other things as well. There are
yeah,
people of menopausal and perimenopausal age who are diagnosed with thyroid conditions, relationship problems, chronic UTIs, celiac disease, all sorts of things. So if the HRT is not working and it's at a decent dose and you've had a good try, say to your doctor, actually, is it something else? And it could be. There's a lot of vaginal conditions that get missed if you've not been examined. So not just sort of vaginal atrophy, but things like lichen sclerosis and all sorts of different things. Chronic UTI you can have, which is, it's outside of being menopausal. So either you're not on the right dose or something else is going on.
yeah. I do feel that poor old menopause gets blamed for loads of things.
Yeah,
And it's really worth noting that, an underactive thyroid, so many
yeah,
symptoms massively cross over, the weight gain, the anxiety, the
yeah.
constipation, the fatigue. And you're thinking, oh, it's my menopause, I'll put another pump in. It's like, no, 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 go and see your doctor, actually.
Mm. Well, what about, I
D,
mean, life, look at all the stuff that happens, at this age group in your when you're sort of 40s, 50s, and 60s. Look at all the stuff that happens to us, relationship issues, divorces,
absolutely.
bereavements,
Yeah.
empty nesting. caring duties, losing your parents, all sorts of things, all these things, also job stress, being great at your career, being losing your career, and all of those things also cause a lot of symptoms. They can cause fatigue, they can cause the weight gain, they can cause the problems with sex.
Yeah.
Our bladders really feel our stress. So, a lot of people will have a sore bladder, sore um, changes in their bladder just from being stressed out. So, there's lots of overlap with a lot of different conditions. So it may not be menopause.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to hold up my glass of water here. How many of you have got a glass of water there? Because, oh, Ellie, I expected no less, and a good large one too. Well done. So let me list some of the symptoms of even very mild dehydration: headaches, brain fog, confusion, anxiety,
Mm,
low mood, constipation, dry skin. So just, and don't they all sound like menopause symptoms? So
mm,
sometimes it's really about making sure that you're also getting some, excuse me, some of the basics right. Um, Very important just to sort of remember that HRT is great for a lot of women, but it's going to be even greater if you get your diet and lifestyle right, because ultimately the body needs to know what to do with these hormones, and all the chain reactions in the body, the enzymatic reactions, they're driven for the most part by nutrients. And so if you're not getting a good balanced diet, you're not going to get anything like the benefit of the HRT compared to if you
mm.
were. So it is worth just making sure you're giving yourself the best possible chance.
100%, 100%. And think about your sleep. We are sort of like a population of insomniacs. There's a lot of people who are not sleeping well, and that is not all menopause. That can be food related, that can be exercise related, life related. So, sort your sleep out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, someone messaged me privately to ask about flaxseed because they'd heard that was good. Now, let me just talk about what flaxseed is. It's part of a group of compounds called phytoestrogens. And phytoestrogens are plant compounds that mimic the action of estrogen in the body. They influence our estrogen receptors. And some studies have shown, and certainly my clinical
Mm,
experience is, that that can really help, in particular with issues around hot flushes and night sweats. Now, they come into two forms. There are isoflavones found in soya-based foods, and it's thought that the historically low level of menopause symptoms experienced by women in Asia who follow a traditional diet of fermented soya could be down to the fact that that's what's going on. Their phytoestrogen level is higher. Um, Here in the West, we thought, oh, soya, that looks good. Let's turn it into milk. So if you are interested in that, think things like tempeh, um, fermented tofu, natto, miso, because yes, you do have phytoestrogens in soya milk and yogurt, but it's already processed. So anything that's processed won't be as nutritious as if it was in sort of the original whole food. And in the Western diet, lignans are the bigger source of phytoestrogens. And the best source of those is flaxseed, ground flaxseed. Must be ground because it's so small our teeth can't break it. Couple of tablespoons a day, about sort of 18 grams a day, is what the studies are showing that can be effective, and that can be a game changer. So adding that to um, your morning cereal or yogurt or sprinkling it over salads could be a way to go. So phytoestrogens are an interesting one. They don't work for everyone, but when they work really well.
really
Oh,
good to know. I mentioned flax seeds in my book, so I'm pleased. I was just reading
oh,
it
well
as you
done.
were talking, so I'm pleased that we totally agree. That's good. I'm pleased I got it right.
Oh, expect no less. Oh my goodness. Um, so what about this one? Do you need to continue with HRT to prevent osteoporosis in older age? How does this work if you only take until the symptoms reduce?
Good question. So if you're taking HRT for symptoms, then you're taking it for the symptoms. If you're taking it because you've been told that you've got osteoporosis and you're choosing HRT as your treatment for osteoporosis, you will be on that longer term and then with bone scans to determine what you're doing. So We're I think we're very bad at treating and looking at bones in the UK system. We don't screen people for osteoporosis. You find out if you've got osteoporosis, or I keep dropping these AirPods. You find out if you've got osteoporosis normally, unfortunately, because you either break a bone or someone in your family does. So it's terrible how we sort our bones and osteoporosis. But if you um are on HRT for HRT symptoms outside of bones, the sad truth is we wouldn't know what your bones are doing unless you asked for a bone scan. So you have to have a discussion with your doctor and say, well, I'm at risk of osteoporosis because, for example, people who've been on steroids, people who are got a low BMI for a long period of time, smoking, family history. So unless you've had that discussion with your doctor and got a bone scan, nobody would know that we're also treating your osteoporosis. If we know we're treating your osteoporosis, then yes, we carry on the HRT for longer.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing advice. I'm conscious of time and we've had loads of great questions there. Some of them I notice are a little bit specific. So I would urge those of you who've had those questions to go and have a chat with your doctor about those specific concerns to make sure you're getting the right advice that's specific to you because we can't really give, personal advice here. So, what I'd like each of us to do now, me and Ellie, is we are going to give a very short final message on our subject for the night, just so we wrap up. So, Ellie, what would you like to share with everybody?
So, what I would like to say is that knowledge is power, as Francis Bacon said, and that particularly in the world of menopause, because there has been so much noise in the last few years, it can be difficult to get the right knowledge. And I think that, also as well, all of us are very sort of heavily marketed. We're very sort of heavily marketed to now, particularly with social media. And if you're of a certain age and looking up certain products, then you'll be sort of have a lot of targeted marketing around menopause and menopause products and menopause supplements and all of this. And you have to be really, really savvy at getting your advice from, proper experts like Jackie and myself, and proper sort of trusted websites and information. And that's difficult because there isn't great access to sort of, GPs and all of that sort of thing. But really be very, very sort of careful and I suppose diligent about the advice you take. We know now there's a whole industry around menopause, both in terms of the products that people are being sold and the tests, and just be a little bit cynical, a little bit wary, and look for sort of very, very mainstream advice from genuine experts, because we're all sort of vulnerable to be taken for a ride at this time when we are feeling vulnerable anyway.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Do you want to just give your book a wave?
Oh yeah, I should do, shouldn't I? I need to. Well, it's on me banner behind
Oh,
me
oh,
there.
here
There,
we are
you
then.
give
I'll
it.
give you
Yeah,
a
yeah,
wave.
you
There we
wave.
are.
Yeah, yeah. So
Right, there we are.
it's available in all good bookshops, high street bookshops, and Amazon and all the rest of it. And so yeah, it's very easy read, and all the advice that, as I say, I wish that I could give people if I had all the time in the world. So,
Excellent.
and there, Haley's just put it in the chat again. Thank you, Haley.
Fantastic. Message from me. I would say, from a nutrition perspective, a couple of things. One is that really focus hard on your macronutrient balance. So, your proteins, your fats, your carbohydrates. We're the generation was brought up, had the low fat message drummed into us as young women. And I see in my clinic all the time women who won't eat nuts because they're, quote, fattening. They contain fat that will make me fat. We just need to be aware that the first thing the body does with fat is not to create fat cells. It uses saturated fat to create hormones, sex hormones. And if ever there was a time in our life when we needed our sex hormones, it now. So a very low fat diet is not a great shout. Don't do low fat hummus, low fat cottage cheese, low fat yogurt.
Mm.
There wasn't that much fat in there in the first place, frankly. It tastes better, the full fat version, and you're going to get the amount of fat that you need from there. Foods that contain protein also contain fat, so that's great. So thinking about my quadrant, my quarter protein, quarter starch. Don't demonize carbohydrate either. It's our primary source of energy, but focus on the really good carbs. So the whole grains, the vegetables, for example. And then you can go do a lot worse than have loads of leafy greens, 2 portions a day, boosting all those menopause-friendly nutrients that I talked about. Just getting that balance right, not overthinking it, can make a big difference to the way that you feel. And I'm going to wave my books now. So my first book, The Happy Menopause, Smart Nutrition to Help You Flourish. And the latest one, which is The Happy Menopause Guide to Energy. Honestly, between them and with Ellie's book as well, you've kind of got pretty much all the information that you're going to need to really empower yourself. So I endorse what she said, empower yourself. Now, can we just pop up the prize draw slide for a second, please? Okie doke, there we go. So, quick reminder of all these wonderful things that are on offer. So, if you're based in the UK, sorry about that, everyone, but it's a postage and customs thing. If you're based in the UK and would like to win one of these and you haven't put your email in the chat, do pop your email in the chat because we're going to all compile all of that. So, these lovely things, that wonderful magnesium flakes, um, our books, the silks, vaginal moisturizer, the peachy granola toppings, and the soak and sleep bedding. So do pop your email in if you haven't already. You don't want to be missing out on that. And you know, Catherine, if you win the first book again, then you can just gift it to someone else and enjoy the second book because they come as a package. Okay, so that's the prize draw. And then I just would like to bring up the final slide for a second. And this is a quick reminder of where you can find both Ellie and I on social media, also our websites. Don't forget to check out my podcast. And in the all you need to do to receive a copy of the recording is to sign up to my mailing list. So tomorrow morning, you're going to get sent the link for that. So do not worry. There'll be a thank you note going out to everyone with a link so you can sign up to the mailing list, and then it's going to get sent out to everybody. So you'll all get the chance to make sure. Not a problem. You'll definitely be able to do that, Catherine. So all good. Okay, so let's lose that slide so Ellie and I can give you all a big wave. I want to say a massive thank you to Ellie. We've been wanting to work together for ages.
Mm,
It's been a great time, and I'm sorry we couldn't cover all the questions, but you gave us some great ones and she gave us some
yeah.
answers. So thank you.
No, thank you, Jackie. And if there's so many questions, we'll have to do another one.
We definitely will. Put that in the chat if you want us to come back and do another. Um, really pleased that you all joined us. So thank you very much. We'll stop the recording now. So I'm going to say my goodbye and then anything else you want to add into the chat?